No one wanted the girl at the end of the wagon line. Not the farmers who needed hands. Not the boarding house women who needed scrub girls. Not the miners who laughed with tobacco black teeth while she stood barefoot on the plank stage. 18-year-old Hannah Bell was the last orphan left in Red Ash. Then the crowd went quiet. A man in a wolfskin coat stepped out of the dust, lifted one gloved hand, and said, $60. The auctioneer froze with his hammer in the air. The dirty prospector who had just bid $8 on her turned pale, and the mountain man, without raising his voice, looked at the whole town and said, "That girl goes under my roof now." The wind moved through Red Ash, Colorado, in the autumn of 1882, like a blade drawn across bone. It carried coal smoke from the mine mouths, manure from the freight teams, and the sour smell of a town that had learned how to call cruelty business. At the north end of the square stood Mercy House, a narrow, leaning orphan home with warped shutters and a bell that only rang for work, punishment, or debt. Hannah Bell had lived there since she was 9. After scarlet fever took her mother, then her father, then the little white house by the cottonwoods, where she had once believed doors were made to keep people safe. Mercy House taught her different. Its master, Abel Sykes, kept account books cleaner than he kept children. Every blanket had a cost. Every bowl of beans became a debt. Every hour of a child's life was written into his ledger as if hunger could be itemized, and fear could be sold by the year. That October morning, Sykes had dragged the oldest wards into the square for what he called a placement sale. The paper pinned to the livery wall said these were lawful labor indentures. The men drinking by the hitching posts called it an orphan auction, because that was what it was. The younger boys went first. A rancher paid $22 for a 14-year-old with strong wrists. A laundry widow took 2 sisters for $12 apiece. Even a limping boy with a bad cough was claimed by a mule driver who needed someone small enough to crawl under wagon axles. With every strike of Sykes's hammer, Hannah felt the stage grow larger beneath her feet. Then there was only her. Sykes shoved her forward so hard the plank edge bit into her toes. Her dress was brown linsey wool, faded gray at the elbows, patched so many times the original cloth seemed like a rumor. Her dark braid hung down her back, too thin from short meals. Her hands were red and cracked from lye water. Her eyes stayed lowered because Mercy House had taught her that direct hope was a dangerous thing. "Last one," Sykes called. "Hannah Bell, 18 years old, reads a little, works quiet, mends well, does not waste words. 5 years service. Opening at $20. No one spoke. A woman in a blue bonnet inspected Hannah's arms, then shook her head. A mine boss laughed and said she looked like a November candle, half burned and ready to go out. Someone behind the water trough asked whether Mercy House would pay him to take her. Sykes's mouth tightened. 15, he said. Silence. 10. The silence turned sharp enough to cut. Hannah looked over the square. She knew every face. These were the people whose floors she had scrubbed when Mercy House loaned her out. People whose sick children she had nursed. People whose shirts she had boiled clean until her knuckles split in winter water. Not one lifted a hand. A thought moved through her with terrible calm. Nobody is coming. Then Rufus Pike stepped from the back of the crowd. He was a placer miner from the dry gulch east of town, a man with a whiskey, yellow beard and eyes that never stayed where decent eyes should. His coat shone with old grease. His boots were cracked white with alkali. When he smiled, Hannah felt every childhood warning in her body stand up and scream. $8, Rufus said. She'll keep my camp. A few women turned away. One man muttered that Sykes ought to refuse him, but muttering was cheap, and $8 was money. Sykes swallowed, glanced at Hannah once, then looked at Rufus's purse. $8 bid, he called. Going once. Hannah's knees weak. Going twice. She closed her eyes. For one brief second, she imagined the Mercy House door behind her, the black iron latch, the way it locked from the outside. She had spent 9 years praying someone would open it. Now she was being sold through it. $60. The voice was low. Not loud, not hurried. It struck the square like a rifle shot anyway. Sykes's hammer stopped midair. The crowd parted before the man had taken 3 steps. Silas Creed was known in Red Ash the way storms were known. You did not invite him. You did not mock him. You noticed when he came down from the Uncompahgre high country twice a year with pelts, silver ore, and raw gold dust. And you thanked the Lord when he left. He was taller than any man in the square, broad across the shoulders, wrapped in a dark wolfskin coat, despite the mild day. A black hat shadowed his eyes. A beard rough and iron-colored covered most of his face. 3 pale scars crossed his right cheek and disappeared beneath his collar, like claw marks left by something that had decided not to finish eating him. Rumors had made a monster of him. Some said he had deserted the war and lived with wolves. Some said he killed claim jumpers and buried them under snow. Some said the scars came from a bear. Others said a man had made them, and that the man did not live long after. Silas ignored all of it. His gaze rested on Hannah, not on her figure, not on her teeth, not on her hands as if weighing labor on her face. Sykes licked his lips. Mr. Creed, 60 is generous. Rufus Pike spat into the dirt. She was going to me. Silas turned his head. That was all. No weapon, no threat. Just the slow turn of a man who had survived things Rufus could not imagine. The prospector's mouth opened, then closed. He stepped backward as if the ground had shifted under him. Silas reached into his coat and dropped a leather pouch onto Sykes's barrel. It landed with a dense, soft thud. Gold dust, Silas said, and 2 nuggets. Weigh it, if your conscience needs help. Sykes opened the pouch. Greed changed his face before he could hide it. Sold, he said quickly, striking the hammer so hard the barrel jumped. Hannah Bell, 5, year indenture, sold to Silas Creed. The word sold rang in Hannah's skull. Silas walked to the edge of the platform. He held out his hand. Hannah stared at it. His palm was huge, calloused, scarred across the knuckles. A hand built for axes, rifles, and winter. She had been afraid of Rufus Pike's soft, hungry fingers. This hand frightened her in a different way. It looked strong enough to break any door in the world. Come down, Silas said. She placed her fingers in his. He did not squeeze. He did not pull hard. He steadied her as she stepped down, then shifted his body between her and the town's staring eyes. Sykes hurried forward with the paper. You'll need her contract, 5 years from today's date. Food and lodging to be provided at your discretion. Silas looked at the paper as if it were a dead rat. Give it here. Sykes handed it over. Silas tore it once, twice, 4 times. The pieces fluttered into the mud around his boots. Sykes gasped. That was legal property. Not anymore. Mr. Creed, you paid for service. Silas's voice hardened. I paid to shut your door behind her. Then he turned to Hannah, and the words he spoke were not soft, but they were steady enough to stand on. Under my roof no one sells you again. A murmur passed through the square. Hannah could not understand what had happened. She had been unwanted one breath, purchased the next, and then somehow not purchased at all. Silas led her to a big bay mule packed with canvas rolls and flour sacks. He lifted her into the saddle with careful hands mounted behind her and guided the animal away from Red Ash without looking back. For the first hour, Hannah waited for the price to come due. Men did not spend $60 from kindness. Men did not tear contracts in public because they liked paper floating in mud. Every mile into the mountains made the town smaller behind them and Silas larger beside her. She could feel the heat of him at her back, the weight of his silence, the rifle in its scabbard brushing her knee whenever the trail turned. The cottonwoods thinned. The ground climbed. Coal smoke gave way to cold pine. By dusk, the road was no longer a road but a scar of stone along the mountainside. Hannah's dress did nothing against the alpine wind. She tried to hide her shaking until her teeth clicked. Silas stopped the mule in a stand of spruce. He dismounted, unfastened the wolfskin coat, and wrapped it around her shoulders. It swallowed her whole. She flinched when his hands came near her throat to draw the edges closed. He saw it. His fingers paused. Then he stepped back. Fire first, he said. Questions later. He built the fire with the patient efficiency of a man who had made warmth from nothing many times before. No wasted movement, no complaint. When the flames rose, he set a tin cup of coffee near her boots and broke a piece of hard sugar into it. Hannah stared at the cup. Sugar. She had not tasted sugar in coffee since her father was alive. Silas sat on the opposite side of the fire, his rifle across his knees facing the dark timber instead of her. You can sleep, he said. I can keep watch, sir. No. I can mend your coat. No. I can work. I know you paid. Silas looked at her then. The fire caught his scars and made them look deeper. I didn't bring you into these mountains for work tonight. Hannah held the hot cup in both cracked hands. Then why? The question hung between them with the smoke. Silas did not answer right away. He looked toward the black outline of the peaks. Because a door that only locks from the outside is not a home. The next day he took her higher. By afternoon they reached a hidden basin cupped between granite walls and dark timber. A creek ran clear as glass through yellow grass. A small cabin stood near the tree line, its logs thick and square, its roof weighted with stone against winter wind. Beside it were a smokehouse, a tool shed, a split, rail pen, and a woodpile stacked higher than Hannah's head. It was not a miner's filthy den. It was a fortress with a chimney. Silas lifted her down, and when her legs almost failed from the ride, he caught her elbow. Then released her the moment she found her balance. Inside, he said, stove is banked. The cabin smelled of cedar smoke, dried apples, leather, and clean wool. The floor had been swept. A kettle sat warming on the iron stove. Against one wall stood shelves packed with books, not just a Bible and almanac, but histories, poems, maps, and a dictionary with cracked red leather. Hannah stood still, stunned by the quiet. Then fear found her again. A clean house meant standards. Standards meant punishment. She spotted a bucket near the door, seized it, and began searching for a rag. If she could make herself useful before he regretted the gold, maybe the gentleness would last one more hour. Silas came in with the packs and stopped. Hannah was already on her knees, scrubbing the lower stoveplate with a scrap of cloth. What are you doing, cleaning? Her voice tripped over itself. I can haul water after. I can wash your shirts. I can cook if you show me where you keep things. I don't eat much, and I don't sleep late, and I won't be any trouble. Silas set the packs down slowly. He crossed the room and crouched in front of her. That alone frightened her. Men at Mercy House crouched to get closer before they struck. But Silas only took the rag from her hand and placed it on the floor. Then he turned her palms upward. For a long moment, he looked at the cracks, the old burns, the rope marks across her wrists from carrying buckets too heavy for her arms. Hannah, he said. Her name in his mouth did not sound like a command. It sounded like something found in ashes and lifted carefully. You do not have to earn the right to sit by my stove. Her eyes stung. But I owe you. No. You paid $60. I paid a thief to stop holding a key. She blinked at him. Silas stood, walked to a wooden chest, and took out a folded blanket of blue wool. He placed it in the chair nearest the fire. This cabin has 2 doors, he said. One opens from the inside. The other opens from the inside too. Learn that first. The rest can wait. He meant it. He cleaned his own rifle, mended his own socks, and asked nothing, except that she sleep, eat, and stop calling him sir if she could manage it. She could not manage it. On the 4th afternoon, while Silas checked traps along the upper creek, Hannah tried to dust the bookshelves. She needed to leave some sign that she was not merely taking up space in the world. A narrow leather journal slipped from behind a geography book and hit the floor. It fell open. She meant to close it. She truly did. Then she saw her own name. August 3rd, Red Ash. Saw Hannah Bell carrying 2 coal buckets from Mercy House cellar. Left hand bleeding. Sykes struck the door frame beside her head to make the little one stop crying. I stood across the street with coffee, doing nothing. Cowardice can wear a man's boots and still call it self-restraint. Hannah's breath stopped. She turned a page. September 19th. Traded pelts for powder, flour, and 1 doctor's bottle of carbolic. Saw Hannah give half her bread to the red-haired child with the fever. Sykes saw too. He made her scrub the steps in the rain. Went back to the high ledge tonight. I dight. The quartz vein is poor, but there is enough gold if I work it hard. I will not leave that girl behind another locked door. Her hands began to shake so badly the words blurred. He had not appeared out of nowhere. He had seen, for months, maybe longer. The frightening mountain man everyone called a monster had been climbing into a dangerous old mine, tearing gold from cold rock, because he had noticed one orphan nobody else wanted. Silas entered with a coil of snare wire over one shoulder. Cold air rushed in behind him. Hannah stood by the shelf with the journal clutched to her chest and tears running silently down her face. Silas saw the book. All the iron went out of him. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to read it." He removed his hat. For the first time since she had met him, the mountain man looked unsure of where to put his hands. "No," he said. "I should have burned that." "Why?" Hannah asked. "Why me?" Silas looked at the stove, the floor, the door, anywhere but her face. "I had a sister." The words came rough. "Mara. She was 7 when our parents died. I was 19. I took work in the Blackfinch mine because the pay was steady, and I thought steady pay made a man groan. Then a roof timber failed. Buried 6 of us. I lived under rock for 2 days with my cheek torn open and my right leg pinned." His fingers touched the scars at his cheek. "When they dragged me out, the town had already sent Mara to a county home in Denver. I spent 3 months healing enough to travel." He stopped. "When I got there, she was in the ground. Pneumonia, no family present. That was all the certificate said." Hannah pressed one hand to her mouth. Silas's eyes lifted, full of something darker than anger. "I came back to Red Ash and found out folks had watched them take her, men. I'd worked beside. Women she'd sung hymns with. Nobody stopped it because nobody wanted trouble. After that, I built this place. I decided the world could rot without me. But you came back. Twice a year for supplies. And saw me." He nodded once. "I saw you quiet frightened children when Sykes was drunk. I saw you put your own shawl around a boy with fever. I saw you stand in that doorway with your face empty, like you'd already learned not to expect rescue." His voice lowered. "I could not open Mara's door in time. I swore I would open yours." Hannah crossed the room before fear could argue with her. She raised a trembling hand to the scars on his cheek. Silas went motionless, as if touch itself might break him. She let her fingers rest lightly against the damaged skin. "Red Ash was wrong about you," she said. Silas closed his eyes. "So was I," he whispered. For one clean moment, the cabin felt like a door standing open to a life neither of them had known how to want. Then the mule screamed outside. "Not Braid," screamed. Silas's eyes snapped open. He shoved Hannah behind him and moved to the window. Through a crack in the curtain, he saw 3 riders at the edge of the basin. Rufus Pike was in front. Behind him rode Levi Morrow, a gambler with a shotgun across his saddle, and Cass Wren, a drifter wanted in 2 counties for killing a freight guard near Gunnison. Silas's face turned cold. They followed the trail. Hannah's stomach dropped. "For me? For the gold." He crossed to the wall pegs and took down his Winchester. "Rufus knows I paid in dust. Men like him can't imagine a man spending all he had for another person's freedom. So he decided there must be more." Outside, Rufus called, "Creed, send out the girl and the gold. We leave you breathing." Silas loaded the rifle 1 brass cartridge at a time. Hannah gripped the back of the chair. There are 3. I count fine. What do I do? He looked at her then, and she saw fear in him. Not for himself. Root cellar. Under the rug, bolt it from below. Whatever you hear, you stay down. No, his jaw tightened. Hannah, you said the doors open from the inside. The line struck him harder than she expected. For half a breath, his face changed. Pride, terror. Love, though. Neither of them had named it. Then gunfire shattered the window. Silas threw her to the floor as glass burst inward, and lead punched the far wall. He fired back through the broken shutter. A horse shrieked. Men cursed. Smoke filled the cabin with bitter gray. Cellar, he barked. This time she obeyed because the look in his eyes begged, even when his voice commanded. She lifted the braided rug, pulled the trap door, and dropped into the dark beneath the cabin. The cellar smelled of potatoes, earth, and lamp oil. Above her, the Winchester cracked again and again. Bullets thudded into logs. A shotgun blast shook dust down between the floorboards. Hannah crouched in blackness, hands over her ears. 9 years at Mercy House had taught her to make herself small when men turned violent. Small girls survived. Silent girls survived. Hidden girls survived. Then she heard a boot on the back threshold. Not Silas's. A slow scrape. A board creak. A man's breath. Through a gap by the trap door, she saw Cass Wren climb through the shattered rear window with a revolver in one hand. Silas was pinned near the front wall, bleeding from his arm, firing toward Rufus and Levi outside. Cass raised the revolver at Silas's back. Something old inside Hannah did not hide. It stood up. Her hand closed around an iron stove poker leaning against a sack of turnips. She climbed the ladder without letting the trapdoor groan, pushed it with her shoulder, and came out behind Cass like a ghost made of all the fear he had ever caused someone smaller. She swung with both hands. The poker struck his wrist with a crack that cut through the gunfire. The revolver dropped and discharged into the floor. Cass howled. Silas spun. Hannah swung again, this time catching Cass across the knee. He collapsed into the table. Silas crossed the room in 2 strides and drove the butt of the Winchester into the side of the man's head. Cass went down and did not rise. Outside, Levi shouted, saw his partner fall, and ran for his horse. Silas's old hound, Brindle, burst from beneath the smokehouse and hit him like a winter avalanche. Levi screamed, dropped his shotgun, and fled into the timber with the dog driving him downhill. Only Rufus remained. Silas stepped onto the porch, blood running down his sleeve, rifle level. Rufus stood behind the chopping block, trying to reload with hands that would not obey him. "Don't," Silas said. Rufus froze. The word was not loud. It did not need to be. The prospector dropped the shells. "Now, Creed, this got out of hand. You rode to my door. It was the gold. You asked for the girl, too." Rufus's face twitched. Silas walked down the steps until the rifle barrel rested a foot from Rufus's chest. Hannah came to the doorway with the poker still in her hands. For years, Rufus Pike had lived in her mind as a shadow waiting at the end of every wrong decision. Now he looked small, damp with terror. A man who thought cruelty was power, until power looked back. Silas glanced at Hannah. It was her fear he was measuring, not Rufus's life. She stepped onto the porch. "Don't kill him." Rufus sagged with relief, Hannah's voice sharp. "Make him stand in front of the law with his hands tied. Let every woman in Red Ash see him brought down alive." Silas held her gaze. Then he lowered the rifle. "That is a harder mercy." By morning, Rufus and Cass were bound across 2 pack saddles. Levi was found at the lower creek with dog bites in his coat, and his boots gone, too frightened to lie. Silas took all 3 down to Ouray and delivered them to Marshal Jonah Mercer, along with Cass Wren's wanted notice and Rufus's confession, which Hannah had made him speak twice before witnesses. 2 weeks later, Abel Sykes was arrested too, not because the town grew a conscience. Towns rarely do that all at once. He was arrested because Hannah named every child he had sold, every debt he had forged, every punishment he had hidden behind Mercy House doors. Silas stood beside her in the courthouse, silent as stone, while a lawyer named Thomas Vale placed the torn fragments of her contract on the judge's bench, like pieces of a broken shackle. By the time the first deep snow sealed the high basin, Hannibal had papers declaring her free of Mercy House, free of Abel Sykes, free of any debt written by a man who had mistaken hunger for consent. She could have gone anywhere. Silas told her so every morning for a week. "There is money in the flour tin," he said. "Enough for the stage to Denver. Enough for boarding after." Then she took the key to the cabin from its nail by the door and placed it in the center of his palm. Silas stared at it. "I don't want a door opened for me just once," she said. "I want a door I choose every day." His fingers closed over the key. "You understand what staying here means? It means winter. Hard winter. I've known worse. It means silence." She looked around the room, the stove, the books, the repaired window, the blue blanket, the two doors that opened from the inside. "No," she said. "It means peace." Spring came late to the high country. When the snow melted, Hannah rode down to Red Ash with Silas beside her. Mercy House no longer had its bell. The building stood empty, its windows broken, its ledger books seized by the court. Children who once slept hungry in its attic had been sent to families under actual inspection. And one stubborn red-haired boy wrote Hannah letters in careful pencil, telling her he now ate eggs on Sundays. At the square, people stared. They stared because Hannibal was no longer the thin orphan on the plank stage. Her hair shone dark in a thick braid. Her wool coat was warm. Her chin was lifted. Rufus Pike sat in the jail wagon outside the courthouse, chained for transport. When he saw her, he looked away. Hannah did not. She walked to the old livery platform where Sykes had once tried to sell her life for $8. The planks were weathered, stained, and smaller than she remembered. Silas stood below, not touching her, not guiding her, not owning a single step. The whole town waited for her to speak. Hannah looked at the place where nobody had lifted a hand. Then she looked at the mountain man whose terrifying silence had been shelter, whose scars had not made him cruel, whose door opened from the inside. "I was not unwanted," she said. "I was unseen by people who had forgotten how to look." The wind carried the words across Red Ash. No hammer struck, no ledger closed, no man named a price. And when Hannah stepped down from that platform, she did not take Silas's hand because she needed saving. She took it because she was free. Years later, when winter storms beat against the cabin and the old door held firm, Hannah would sometimes wake before dawn and listen to the wind trying every crack. It never got in. Silas would be asleep beside the stove chair, one hand resting near hers, his scars softened by firelight. And Hannah would remember the day Red Ash called her worth $8. Then she would look at the silver ring, at the key hanging where both of them could reach it, and at the door that opened from the inside. The mountain had not swallowed her. It had given her back her name.